So what is pollination? Pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma. What is the importance? Um, the sexual reproduction in order to produce viable and variable offspring, it ensures a continued existence of a plant species. So there are two types of pollination, self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is when the pollen of the same flower falls onto the stigma of that same plant. Cross-pollination is pollen from a different flower that falls onto the stigma of another flower of the same species. So next we can see these are some mechanisms that help aid pollination. We have wind, water, and animals, and there's a brief description on how they help. Then we look at the process of pollination. The anther of the stamen releases pollen grains that contain sperm cells. The pollen from the same or another flower lands on the stigma, which is a sticky surface, through the before mentioned mechanisms. This transfer from the pollen, the transfer from the pollen to the anther to the stigma is known as pollination. Once on the stigma, the pollen grains start to grow, a pollen tube, which penetrates the stigma and style until it reaches the ovule or embryo sac in the ovary. Sperm get delivered through an opening in the ovule known as the micropyle. So the process of fertilization. Fertilization is the fusion of a male and female sex cell to produce seeds. This process happens during pollination. Fertilization occurs as following. Each mature pollen grain contains two male sex cells. When the pollen grain attaches to the stigma of a flower of the same species, a long pollen tube is produced down the style, which transports the male sex cell to the ovule of the female sex cell. Within the embryo sac of the ovule, one male sex cell fertilizes the egg and develops into a seed. Double fertilization only occurs in angiosperms. One sperm cell fuses with the egg, the other with two polar nuclei, resulting in a 2N zygote and a 3N endosperm, respectively. Okay, so the next I just have a picture of fertilization taking place, explaining how it takes place. And then this is just a list of all the resources that I've used. Thank you very much.